Hello everyone, Brian here, and welcome to my May garden tour. So what you're looking at now is some rhubarb. I am very pleased with how this has come up and grown this year. Much better than I expected, since last year it had grown up in weeds and was just not looking very good for a while. But it has grown quite a bit. I've harvested maybe 4 or 5 pounds off of it. I did let it go to flower, as you can see, and it has produced quite a few seeds. They're not actually ready to harvest yet, but I am going to have a good crop of rhubarb seeds. Um, yeah, it's just done really well considering this is a hot summer climate that rhubarb hates. It does get plenty of cold in the winter though. So there is a lot of new stuff in the garden. So I'm going to probably go through some of it pretty quickly, but just know that April has been a very busy month. And so the garden has changed a lot. So next to the okra, you can sort of see here, maybe. I'm having a little trouble with lighting on the phone, so I can't really tell exactly if I've got the camera pointed to the right spot. But you're looking at okra seedlings and lots of weeds. Um, Okra is pretty easy to grow here in the southern US. This is sown a little thickly. Since I save my own seeds, I can just plant a lot of them and then thin them later. Um, Moving on, I have set up a trellis here. This is a pretty flimsy one. It's just some nylon trellis netting. It's got a wire up the top to keep it from sagging too much. This is where I am growing cucumbers. And the cucumbers are up. They're gradually going. The variety here is Arkansas Little Leaf, which is a pickling cucumber with small vines. I don't eat pickles. I'll let them get just a little bigger and eat them fresh. But they are coming along nicely. Because the vines are small, they will not overwhelm this trellis, which is probably a little small for full-size cucumber vines. So these things that look really almost exactly like the okra, this is actually roselle. In my location, you do have to get a roselle that flowers early. The variety here is Thai Red. I have successfully grown it here at 36 degrees north. This one will start flowering in about early July, whereas normally I wouldn't get any flowers until October, and it would all just freeze and die rather than produce anything. A little further along, there's some cantaloupes here amongst the weeds. These are going to be probably my first fresh fruit other than tomatoes and berries from the garden. I just wanted to get some of these in a little earlier, and I sowed them thick, and I'll have to come and thin these as well. I do use landscape fabric on either side of melons typically, because if you don't, they tend to get a lot of weeds that you really can't get in there and take care of. But so the variety here is, I think it's Sierra Gold, which is a common open pollinated variety. Melons do pretty well in this climate. Sometimes they get a little watered down if there's a lot of rain as they're maturing. So in the rest of the sort of mini garden, this is where the mountain of wood chips was. There's still some here. I'm clearing it out. Probably I'll get cleared out sometime the next day or two. And I'll prepare this for planting. I'm planning on putting probably lima beans and grain sorghum in the rest of this area. So I am still working the compost. Uh, the top layer here, you can see some weed seeds, but this is actually heated up pretty nicely this time. It has a whole bunch of Johnson grass rhizomes in it, and it got up to about 130, and I think that will be enough to kill them all. So I should be mostly Johnson grass free in this one, unless some is coming up from seed. I'm gonna have to turn this pile. The temperature is beginning to go down, so I'll have to turn it. I'll probably add some more material to it to get it bulked up, because it's a somewhat smaller pile than I would really like. But I'll add some fresh green material and get it to heat up again, and eventually sift some stuff out of it. So I removed the cover from the polytunnel this morning, and I'll be removing the frame over the next few days. I need to use the area that it's in right now to plant some fig trees, and so I'm going to have to clean all of this up and move the plants and get this area ready for that. When I take the frame down, I will also lose my tomato, which has gotten quite large back here. This was started as a cutting, I think, back in February. It has been producing a few small cherry tomatoes. There's a couple right, oh, let's see if I can, yeah, right back here that are ripe, and I will harvest those later today. But it's gonna have to come out of there, so I'm about to get the last of the tomatoes on it. Otherwise, there are a lot of extra plants here. Some seeds that are still getting started, like this one over here is where field corn will eventually be coming up. It has only been planted for a couple of days, so it hasn't come up yet. I've got some celery here. This is the containers that the rutabagas were in that I harvested last month. The celery was in here the whole time, but it was completely covered by rutabagas. I have been pruning a few leaves off of it to fix with dinner, so I've been enjoying some celery. Potatoes from seed, not really doing much. They are still alive. I'm thinking they'll flower pretty soon, and they might produce some fruit. These are the figs that will be going in along the north side of the garden when I clear the polytunnel stuff completely out. So elephant garlic is looking very good. It is just beginning to send up some scapes. I will be pruning those when they get a little bigger so that I can have them for dinner, and the plant can then concentrate on the bulb. But it's doing very nicely. My rutabagas that I planted in December have started bolting. I am going to collect seed from them, so I'll have lots of seeds available in the fall. I did actually get some fist-sized roots off of a few of them, so they weren't a total loss. Clearly they do need to be planted earlier than December, but I'll get a good seed crop out of them. I got a few roots, so all is good. You can sort of see in there some of my yellow potato onions that were originally in that row. They are maturing. A few of them are starting to flower. That's fine for perennial onions. This one doesn't appear to be flowering, but they'll be ready to die, or they'll be ready to harvest when the foliage begins to die down. Now, I also have all these Welsh onions that have flowered and are going to seed. I'm going to be taking in, when I rebuild the compost pile, this will be the green material that I put in it. I don't really need all these onions at this point, and I would like to go ahead and cut them back down to the ground. They'll come back up. I'll cut them back down to the ground, and I will then be able to use them to heat the compost, and they won't be quite so disorderly. They're a little top heavy when they're flowering, and we had some strong winds come through here about a week ago. There was a tornado touchdown a couple miles away, but here it was just some strong winds, and so they got buffeted a little bit, and they're kind of messy right now. So wheat is looking beautiful. Lots of food coming along there. It's actually looking like I might get pretty close to my goal of around 1 pound for every 10 square feet. It's all going to depend, I think, on how badly the birds attack it as it begins to mature. Birds can be a problem. They'll come along at the edge of the wheat and break down the stalks and then peck off the grain off of all of the ears. So the barley is actually maturing. That will probably be harvested, I think, within about 2 weeks. You can sort of see that some of the heads have taken on a darker color. That is because this is a purple type of barley, and it develops the color as it ripens. So it is beginning to dry down. There's still quite a bit of green in it, but it's not going to be long before this is ready to harvest. I might do a barley harvest video when I harvest it. We'll see. The whole process of harvesting and winnowing, threshing and winnowing and putting it away, it takes some time. It is not something that you just do in one day. So down here, in amongst these weeds that I'm really going to have to get serious about pretty quickly, sometime in the next couple of days, I do have 3 parsnip plants. I'm kind of hoping that the parsnips will bolt in the summer heat and I will be able to get a seed crop for planting in the fall. For that to happen, I'd probably need to have the seeds mature by about probably late August. I don't know if it will grow that fast and bolt that fast. I guess we'll just have to see. Behind them, the carrots have definitely taken off in April as the weather warmed up. I think when I did the April tour, I didn't even bother to show them because you almost had to get down on your knees and put your eye to the soil to see where the carrots were growing. They're a little more obvious now. These collards, not doing so great. The yellow butterflies have been at them. If I get in here and either spray them or pick off the worms, there are a couple of worms right there. So if I can get those off of there, then they may still produce a crop before they bolt. We'll just have to see. Hidden down in the weeds here, there's some spinach. I've got a couple of harvests off of it. You can see it's got a few holes in the leaves. I think some of that might be slug damage. I see like a cucumber beetle down in there. I know there are some flea beetles around that have probably been attacking them as well. So the celery that I put out in the garden, kind of doing okay. It will get too hot for it pretty soon and it will bolt, but it is growing. It just got too slow a start, I think, to really produce a good stalk, but I may get some leaves off of it. So I only have 2 lettuce plants, and it is so hard to see this phone with the sun to see what I'm shooting. But anyway, I do have 2 red lettuce plants here. I am going to let them go to seed and bolt, but I will harvest a few of the outer leaves as it goes along. Bulbing onions coming along nicely. They'll probably start to form bulbs pretty soon, and they're still pretty small, so I don't expect big onions out of them. That's okay. I already depend on the Welsh onions and walking onions for most of my cooking. Fava beans They are beginning to put on some flower buds. They've definitely grown a lot during April. Um, I don't really think that I'm going to get much out of them. They will burn up once the heat comes in. This is May, and although there's a possibility of frost early in May, it's not happening this year. And I think it's probably going to be probably well over 85 degrees by the end of the month. That would be around 30 Celsius. Um, so I don't know how that's going to work out. I'd like to get a seed crop out of it actually, and so that's going to take the longest time, and I just don't expect to get it. So the oats is kind of funny. Some of this is actually like this right here. That's rye. That's not oats. But it is interesting how half of this patch is doing really well, and the other half looks kind of puny. And I'm not sure exactly why. I don't think it's an issue of fertility. It has been fertilized, but it was fertilized pretty evenly. So, not really sure what's going on with that, but I think I will get an oats harvest out of it. I just need to be pretty aggressive at getting rid of the rye that's in it, or at least chopping it down. So, sweet corn has been in the ground for about 3 weeks now. I need to come through here and fertilize it some more and then hill it up, and then it will just mostly be a matter of waiting for it to start silking out. It's looking pretty nice. I got a good stand of it. Of course, it's easier to get a good stand of sweet corn if you transplant it, which is what I normally do, even though that's not really common in this area. And I find that it works really well. So over here in these bins, except for the onions at the far end that I'll get to, these all have very similar, a very similar pattern of planting now. I cleared them all out. I added some compost. It's all very weedy, so I'm having to come in here and hand cultivate it, and I will eventually put some wood chip mulch on top. Right now, what these have in them is each one of them has 3 pepper plants. This one is Tajín jalapeno. This one is red Marconi. And this one in the back is a long, slim red cayenne, supported by some cut-up coat hangers. But they all have 3 pepper plants in them, and those are the 3 different varieties that I've got planted. They all have 5 peanut plants in them, and they all have 1 sweet potato vine on the west side. And so what I'm kind of hoping to do is the peppers will grow up tall. The peanuts will work as more of a ground cover, and the sweet potatoes, I'm gonna have them grow just a little bit along the front and then drape down the front, with the hope of keeping the bin a little bit cooler so it doesn't dry out so fast. These bins can get really hot when the sun hits them in the summer, and they just really dry out. Peppers like the heat, peanuts like the heat, but they do still have to be kept watered. In between these right now, I've just got a few potted plants that I needed a place to put. This is some lemongrass that's been growing for a few years. It's looking pretty puny because I didn't take care of it last year at all. It just, it nearly died out. That sweet potato vine is looking a little bigger, like it might be about ready to start vining. This is jicama. I don't really think my growing season is long enough to produce jicama, but I'm gonna hope to get a seed crop. It's in a container, so I can put it in the polytunnel later in the season if I need to. And I just hope to get a seed crop off of it. I'll have to put some supports in that container in a little bit. More peppers, mint. This is spearmint. I've had it in the garden previously. Uh, you're always told never plant mint in the ground. I'm reasonably confident that the mint that is in the ground in this garden is probably already dead, but if it's not now, it will be after it gets mulched and has to deal with field corn for all summer. So this bed had some elephant garlic in it, and I've just sort of left it in there while planting the peppers and the peanuts and the sweet potato around it. Got some chives flowering. The flowers are pretty tasty. Um, these were in one of these bins and they were already flowering when I pulled them out of there. I put them in the containers and they just haven't stopped. I may actually take and move these to, like, let's say a flower bed in front of the house in the future. I'm not sure where I want to put them to keep them in the garden. Then these are Egyptian walking onions. This is what I'm currently harvesting whenever I just need to come out to the garden and get some onions. They are really quite tall this year. These are pushing 3 feet tall. In fact, the tallest ones are probably a full meter in height. But they've been sort of put together here in a bunch. They looked pretty pitiful over the winter. Egyptian walking onions are not as hardy as, let's say, Welsh onions, but they have come back nicely and they're growing well. So moving back to the west end of the garden, this triple row that looks like it's got Johnson grass in it. It does have some Johnson grass in it, but most of this is sorghum. This is sweet sorghum, which is harvested to make syrup. So I'm hoping to get a few quarts at least of sorghum syrup. I might do a video when this is harvested showing my method of production. I don't have a cane press that would take and extract the juice from it, so I use water extraction and a few home brewing tools to sort of clean it up and make a nice product out of it. So here I've got a partial row of black beans. I've got some more seedlings that will finish out this row, but I just haven't put them in yet. I've been planting them in as they come up, basically. This will be used as a dried bean. At the end of the tomato row, a little extra space, so I put some lemongrass in. I have 3 varieties of tomatoes and they just sort of alternate down the row. That's the smallest plant, assuming it's showing up on camera. I can't see from the sun glare, but that is a Celebrity Plus. Then moving over here, we have an Amish Paste and Sun Sugar Cherry Tomato, which is the same as the one in the greenhouse. And then we go back to Celebrity Plus and then Amish Paste. So it's just alternating down the row. There are a few green tomatoes here. The biggest plant is this one right here, which is the one that I had grafted. This is Amish Paste on a Sun Sugar stock. So this was my first tomato grafting attempt. It is the largest plant. It's got a fair number of tomatoes on it. Don't know how well that's showing up on camera because I can't see from the glare, but it's doing pretty good. So the next row over, it's another partial row of beans. These are Henderson bush lima bean. I did not have great germination on these, and when I finish out the other row of black beans, I will just come down this row from the other end to fill out the row completely. I will be able to save seeds from these. There's no real issue with them crossing, partly because beans generally don't cross, but also because lima beans and common beans, which are what these black beans are, will not, they're different species, so normally they don't cross anyway. So going down the row right here, this trellised row has sweet potatoes in it. Now, sweet potatoes are not natural climbers, but to save space, I do trellis them when they're in the main garden. Because if you don't, they will grow everywhere. But they're pretty easy to trellis. It might actually be a good idea if you are in a colder climate to trellis them, so that you could then like put some clear plastic on the ground or something to get the ground warmed up. Here, that's not really an issue. The particular types here, I've got 3 different kinds of sweet potatoes. I've got a purple one, I've got sort of an orange one, and then most of these are actually a white variety called Hayman. It makes a pretty nice French fry. It's not as productive as the other 2 kinds, but that's okay. I prefer that one for the purpose of cooking, because I'm not really a huge sweet potato fan. It's too hard to pass up on the high productivity they give in the garden. Next row, we've got, this is sort of a mixed row. It's mostly herbs. So I've got some oregano here. Then a little further along, there's some stevia. Then lemongrass. Okay, so this is not an herb. And make sure it's on the camera. There we go. This is sold as Egyptian spinach. It is sort of intended as a warm season leafy green. It has another name that you might be more familiar with, jute. So if you decided you didn't like the leaves, you could always pretend that you planted it for the purpose of making a burlap bag, I guess. But I am gonna grow some of it. I'll probably have to do some experimenting with cooking it. I do find that the leaves are just a little bit of a slimy texture. They don't taste like spinach. They don't have much flavor at all. But I think I can do something with it, and we'll just have to see. Continuing, I've got some cinnamon basil here. These were taken from cuttings, and the plant was already flowering, so they are also already flowering. Maybe they will revert to a more juvenile stage, but if not, then I'll collect some seeds and maybe just plant some more. There's plenty of time to plant basil. Similar story with this lime basil. This is looking pretty ratty too, but I think it will recover. And then I needed to fill out the row, and this is amaranth, and this is the Love Lies Bleeding type, which has sort of hanging, fuzzy looking flower heads. So I am growing it mostly as a grain crop. It can also be, the leaves are also edible as a cooked green. And I am going to be planting more of this when I take out the barley. This is going to be what replaces it. The seeds just aren't far enough along yet, and that's going to be what I do with that space. So here I have another lime basil. This was just put out. I just finished the trellises for this row a couple of days ago, and I have planted some butternut squash in here that hasn't had time to come up yet. But that should be up soon. I am going to have 2 kinds of squash this year. I'll have to go over to the other one in just a minute. This will be butternut squash though, and it's just going to grow on these frames. A couple of these frames didn't have any webbing in them, and so I needed to go ahead and put something in, and I decided not to go with the fence wire because I have a different use for that later in the year, and I didn't want to cut it. So for the rest of this area in the garden, you can see the marking flags where the field corn is going to go. That probably won't be going in for a couple of weeks. Lots of Johnson grass growing out here that I'm going to have to dig up some more. The seedlings aren't yet up for the field corn. I delayed planting the field corn because I don't want it to cross-pollinate with the sweet corn. So I've got time separation going on. There's also enough space for one more row in there that will probably get tomatoes. But you're basically looking at the space that is currently open in the garden, other than that area over in the mini garden where the wood chips are piled. So it's mostly planted. So the last thing I wanted to show you was my area where I've got my blackberries. They are beginning to flower. I'm not really expecting a big harvest on this big mound of blackberries here, but I do have some in another part of the yard where I'm eventually going to clear them out. And so I will have a decent harvest of blackberries, I think. And then the figs are doing well. They took a little frost damage in early April, but they've recovered nicely and are doing pretty well. I did have one Brava fig on here, but I've noticed that it has dried up and fallen off. So I'm gonna have to wait for my main crop figs, which was what I was always looking forward to anyway. So that's good. I am in this area also as almost just a ground cover, going to be growing some squash. You can see the plants here. This type is green stripe cushaw, which is a type that is resistant to the squash vine borer, like the butternut over in the other area. It produces a pretty large white and green striped squash that has a very kind of bland flavor to it. It's not strongly flavored at all, and it's got yellow flesh. It also doesn't keep as long as the butternut, so those are sort of the downsides to it. The seeds are pretty tasty though, and it produces a lot. It's just that I'll have to take it and keep it for long enough that the heat of processing will heat up the house during the winter rather than the summer, and I'll just have to blend it with some butternut squash or some sweet potato for all of my cooking with it to give it some flavor. So that's the garden tour for this month. Much longer. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's any of these that you're growing in your garden, or if there's something you think I should try sometime. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.